Noah didn't expect to find anyone in his barn that cold night, let alone an old woman curled between the hay bales like a discarded coat, her clothes torn, face hollow, and body shaking so hard it made even the mice stay back. And for a moment, the single father with a tired back, unpaid bills, and a daughter sleeping inside the farmhouse didn't move, just stared at the figure wrapped in darkness and dust, because life had already taken too much from him. His wife, his job, his parents, even. Most of the friends who used to visit before the foreclosure letters started piling up on the kitchen table. But then the old woman opened her eyes, pale and sharp despite the wrinkles around them, and whispered, "I'm not here to steal," and something in her voice, dry, cracked, but sure, stopped Noah from yelling or calling the sheriff. And instead he set the lantern down, took off his flannel, and handed it to her without speaking. And when she took it, hands trembling from cold or something deeper, she nodded once like she understood he wasn't just giving warmth, he was offering trust, and he turned without a word, locking the barn door behind him so she'd be safe from the wind, telling himself she'd be gone by morning, a ghost of the storm that had passed. But when the rooster crowed and sunlight cracked through the trees, he found her still there, sitting upright with his coat folded neatly in her lap, and she said, "Thank you," in a way that didn't sound weak, didn't sound needy, just full of dignity. And when his daughter June wandered into the barn looking for the kitten that always ran from her, the old woman smiled and said, "Try whistling. Cats like music." And June, who hadn't laughed in weeks since her mother's picture was taken off the wall, giggled as the kitten actually came. And that was a moment Noah decided not to ask her to leave. Not yet, because even though he didn't know her name or story, something about her made the barn feel less broken. And over the next few days, she stayed in the loft, helped feed the animals, and once even fixed the back gate that hadn't latched right in years. And Noah started noticing things. How she always studied the sky like she knew what the weather would be. How she walked with pain but didn't complain. And how she muttered things like valve casings loose or that line needs bleeding every time she passed his old rusted tractor that hadn't started since last winter. And one morning, after watching her kneel by the engine and trace her fingers over the bolts like someone reading Braille, he asked, "You a mechanic or something?" And she looked up, eyes clear and far away, and said, "I used to be a teacher, diesel engines, before arthritis stole the strength from my hands." And when he asked where, she said, "Army base down in Georgia." Taught boys who didn't know a wrench from a radio, and something about the way she said it, calm and proud, made him see her not as a vagrant or a burden but as someone who used to carry a whole lot more than she let on. And when he brought her a cup of coffee and asked her name, she said, "People used to call me Red." And when June asked why, she smiled and pulled back her sleeve to show a faint old tattoo of a phoenix across her forearm. The ink faded but still fierce, and said, "Because I never stayed down for long." And that became her name on the farm, Miss Red. And days turned to weeks. The tractor started running again under her care. The chicken coop was mended, and June started leaving flowers by her barn door every morning. But trouble came when a neighbor, Mr. Harver, who always saw more than he should and liked to run his mouth at the diner, called child services and the sheriff, saying Noah was letting a crazy old squatter live near a little girl. And one Tuesday afternoon, a social worker in a tan car rolled down the gravel road with papers in hand, asking questions with too much politeness, eyeing Red like she was a threat, and saying things like safety protocols and unvetted presence. And that night, Red sat on the porch steps, silent, watching fireflies while Noah paced, angry and scared, because he knew how this could go. He could lose June just for giving someone shelter. And finally he said, "Why didn't you tell me more about you? Who you really were?" And Red sighed and said, "Because I wanted to be seen for what I did here, not what I did decades ago." And then she stood, walked to the barn, and came back with a metal box she'd kept buried under the straw. And inside were old ID cards, medals, a certificate with her name, Margaret Redding, Civilian Instructor of the Year, U.S. Army Engineering Corps, and photos of her standing beside tanks, surrounded by young soldiers in uniform, her arms crossed like someone who didn't need to prove anything. And Noah felt shame rise in his chest for ever doubting her. And he scanned the documents, took photos, and when the social worker came back the next day with a sheriff in tow, He handed over everything, said, "You're accusing a veteran who served longer than both of you have been alive." And for a moment, neither of them spoke, until the sheriff, recognizing her from a training seminar years ago, saluted and said, "I'm sorry." And the social worker backed off, mumbled something about misunderstanding, and drove away. And that night, June asked if Red could read her a story, and Red, voice softer now, read from an old manual about engine pistons like it was poetry. And days passed, and the air got colder, and one evening Red didn't come out of the barn, and Noah found her lying still in the hay, pale and sweating. And when he rushed her to the clinic, the doctor shook his head and said, "Stage 4. She's known a while." And Red, awake and calm, whispered, "I didn't come here to die. I came here to live a little longer." And for the next few weeks, she stayed in the farmhouse, in the room that used to be Noah's wife's sewing room. And June brought her cookies and warm milk, and Noah fixed the roof for her so the rain wouldn't bother her rest. And one morning, she asked to be taken outside, to see the barn one last time. And as they wheeled her down the porch, neighbors who once looked away now waved, some bringing soup, others just standing in silence. And when she passed Harvey's fence, even he tipped his hat. And in the barn, she looked up at the rafters, smiled, and said, "This place saved me." And then she reached out, took June's small hand, and said, "Keep learning, little one." And her hand went still, her chest stopped rising, and the warmth in the barn shifted to something sacred. And Noah, tears falling but heart full, buried her beneath the big maple tree on the hill, the one that turned red every fall, and carved a sign that read, "Coach Red, mechanic, teacher, family." And word spread far and fast about the old woman who taught soldiers, fixed broken things, and healed a farm. And one day, a black SUV rolled down the Date Road, and a colonel stepped out, saying he used to be one of her students and had been looking for her since she vanished from the VA rolls. And when he saw the grave, he saluted, tears in his eyes, and handed Noah a folded flag, saying, "She trained half the engineers in my battalion." And that winter, a grant came in her name, funding repairs for struggling farms, and the barn got rebuilt stronger. The tractor purred like new, and June grew up telling everyone she once knew a hero who slept in a hayloft and taught her how to be brave. And every year on the day Red died, the town held a small ceremony, not because she was famous, but because she mattered. Because sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one notices until they're gone. And Noah, sitting on the porch every night, would look at the stars and whisper, "Thank you, Red," knowing that in a world full of storms, one quiet woman had brought peace to a family on the edge of falling apart, not with speeches or money, but with grease-stained hands, quiet strength, and a heart that never gave up, even when no one was watching.